Are you studying for the MCAT and feel overwhelmed with just how much material you need to know for the exam? Do you feel like whenever you learn new material, the old material just kind of falls out of your head? If you answered yes to these questions, stay tuned and I have the solution for you. Arvind here from MCAT Mastery, and today I'm going to show you how to revolutionize your content review strategy using one simple tool, Anki. When I started content review, I found myself lost. I would be rereading material over and over again because I'd forgotten it as I learned new material. And I can't tell you how much time I wasted from that. Now, I'd heard of Anki before and I'd used some pre-made decks, but I honestly thought it was kind of overrated and not as helpful as people really made it up to be. And I was so wrong. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Anki from start to finish to do content review. This video will be long, but trust me, you'll definitely find it helpful. This technique brought my score from a 499 to a 517 on test day in a matter of a month and a half. And I know that you'll be able to pick up something that will really help you on your journey. This video will be split up into a couple parts. So first we're going to be talking about what exactly Anki is and the kind of science behind it. Then we'll delve into the installation instructions, and then we'll go over how to use it to review documents, textbooks, and YouTube videos. So let's get into it. So first, what is Anki? So Anki at its core is a flashcard program, and the thing about flashcard programs that make them so important is the idea of active recall. The concept's pretty simple. Basically, active recall is when you have to actively summon information rather than just passively looking at it. For example, if you're studying immune cells in the body and say you're studying B cells in particular, so on one side of the card you'd have B cells and on the back you'd have what exactly they are, and you have to actively recall the definition by just looking at the word B cells. And so that's an example of active recall. Passive recall would be just looking in your notes and seeing, it's saying B cell and the definition, and just looking at the information. And so that would be passive recall. Now you might ask then, why can't I just use normal flashcards, or why can't I use Quizlet? Why do I have to use Anki in particular? The power of Anki comes in another principle called spaced repetition. Spaced repetition is basically a learning technique where you learn material in increasingly spaced intervals that ultimately increases long-term retention. If we take the example from earlier with the B cells, say we have an Anki card called, what is the function of B cells? So the first time you make that card, you're probably going to see it every day. And then as you get better at it, you might see it every other day, and then maybe every 3 days, and then maybe every 5 days, and then every week, and then it could go up to a month. So what this is doing is it prevents you from having to review all your cards every single day, but at the same time making sure that you don't forget material from earlier, so you're able to learn new material while still holding on to the old material that you learned. Now, enough talking in abstract, let's hop onto Anki on the computer and learn exactly how we can do this. So first what we're going to do is click the link below to download Anki. So once you download Anki, this is the screen that you're going to see, and it looks extremely bare bones, very basic, and not very attractive. And that's okay. For now, what we're going to do is just focus on showing you the power of Anki and the things that you can do with it. And then in another tutorial, we'll teach you how to make it look very fancy and kind of more attractive and maybe look like this. Okay, so there's a lot of settings here kind of hidden around in Anki, but we're just going to change a couple before we start. So first, you're going to hit this gear icon right here, and you're going to hit Options, and you'll have this little thing pop up here. And this will originally be set at 20. And you want to change that to $9.99. And when you set it at $9.99, what that does is make sure that you hit all the cards that you need to do for that day on that particular day. Because when you have it set at 20, what Anki will do is limit yourself to only see 20 cards every day, when in reality you might have made like 30 or 40. And it will just not let you review more cards than that. And what we want to do is make sure that we're doing all the cards that we need to for that particular day. So once we're done with that, we're going to hit OK, and then we're going to make a new deck. So hit Create Deck in the bottom, and then it'll ask you for a name. We're just going to call it Content Review. And then now you can make subdecks under that. So if we want to do biology, we can make a biology deck. If we want to make like physics, we can make a physics deck. And then you can just drag it, and then you just put it under Content Review like that. And then you just do that with the same thing, right where that line appears. And now these are basically two subdecks under Content Review. And basically this just keeps it very organized. So, if you're making new cards and you're doing biology, you can put them under biology or physics. But when you're actually reviewing them, I advise that you review the entire deck, right? Not just reviewing biology or physics, but review the entire deck of Content Review at the same time. Because what that does is it switches up the types of cards that you're seeing, right? So you might see biology card, and then you'll see a physics card next. So your brain will kind of have to do a switch in order to go between those two topics, and having to do that makes a stronger neural network for you to remember the material. So you'll remember the material better when your prep isn't mixed up like this. So once we figure out everything about this, now we're going to figure out the different types of card types that we have. So you're going to hit add here, and there's different cards, different basic cards, and then the close. Basically, close is kind of a fill in the blank style, but for sake of simplicity, we're going to stick to basic, as well as another card type called image occlusion. And that isn't here yet, and what we need to do is add that card type to our Anki. So what we're going to do is hit cancel, and just follow along here, and it'll make sense. Just hit tools, add-ons here, get add-ons, and it's going to ask you for a code. So I have the code down in the description, as well as I'm going to type it in right here. So 137 477 2155, and that's our code for it. So hit OK, and then it's going to download it. It's going to ask you to restart Anki. So hit OK, close out of Anki, and then we're just going to reopen it. And so it comes up here, and we have, if we look here, we'll have our image occlusion right here. So basically what image occlusion is if you have some kind of diagram, say you have like glycolysis, right? What you're able to do is you're able to block out the individual steps of a glycolysis diagram and then quiz yourself on those steps. And so it's really helpful for diagrams, for tables. I found it really helpful for psych-soc, where you had to know like the stages of development. You could literally block out the rows of like the particular stage and then kind of test yourself on each one. So very, very helpful, and we'll go over this towards the end of the video. But for now, we're just going to stick to basic for sake of simplicity. So we have a front and we have a back. So front is where we type our question, and back is where we type a response. And we're also able to add a picture here, which we'll do. So first, what we're going to do is use this technique to review articles and websites. And this technique can also be used on textbooks or documents or any kind of text-based source that you have. First, we'll start with websites, and so we'll just pick kind of an arbitrary topic. So operons, how about operons? So those, the topic of operons are pretty important for the MCAT. It comes up a lot in passages, so I think it'll be pretty helpful both to learn this and to learn what operons are. So what we're going to do is just straight up just look up operons MCAT, and I've looked it up before. And you have multiple sources here, whatever works best for you, but I really like Khan Academy whenever they have articles, because they have very detailed but very simplified articles on the topics. They make it super easy to understand, as well as having very nice diagrams that you can use. So we're just start at the top. These are the key points that we see. So we're going to talk about operons, regulatory DNA sequences, and all these things. The kind of gut instinct, I think, is to whip out your flashcards and to just, make on one side, just say, I guess, operons, and then the definition on the other side. And this is something you want to kind of stop doing, because you're not really making any connections this way, and it makes it harder to remember the material when you don't have connections to the material. So what you want to do with these cards is make questions out of them, right? You don't want to just make statements, but make questions, because when you make a question, you're really actively recalling the answer to that question, and it really makes it helps you remember it better. So we're going to avoid just looking at the key points and writing things down. We're going to read through it and figure out what exactly we're seeing here. So introduction, very, very basic. You can pause and read through this if you'd like. This next paragraph gets interesting, though, because we talk about promoters and operons. So we see in bacteria, related genes are often found in a cluster on the chromosome, where they're transcribed from one promoter as a single unit. Okay, and then you stop and you kind of process that, and then you continue reading. Such a cluster of genes under control of a single promoter is known as an operon. Common bacteria, rare in eukaryotes. Okay, so once you read that paragraph, ask yourself, what did you get from it? And whatever you got from it is what you should ultimately be making a card on. And it's completely okay. Like if you read that paragraph and you're just like, I'm confused, I don't really know what I read, just reread it, and then hopefully it'll make more sense. If not, go to different sources. But once you understand it, that's the point where you want to make the card, right? You want to make a card from your understanding to kind of capture that eureka moment that you had while you're going over it this one time, right? So when you review this card maybe a week later, you still have that same eureka moment of remembering or understanding what this was at that point. So you definitely want to understand it and be able to put it into your own words before you make the card. And so, like we said earlier, you want to make it questions and relationship based. So we have two terms here, promoters and operons, and I think we can make a very easy relationship between these two. So I'm going to read through this. I'm going to try to frame a question, try to answer it without looking at it, and then make a card out of it. So just bear with me here. So we have the promoter. So the promoter is the thing that is transcribing this cluster of genes, okay? And the cluster of genes that is controlled by a promoter is called an operon. Okay, so then I might ask myself, what is an operon and how is it controlled? I think that's a question that kind of sums up what I just stated earlier. So what is an operon and what is it controlled by? So what is an operon? It is a cluster of genes that are controlled by a single promoter. And a definition as simple as that works, right? You just word it in your own way and you can make a card out of that. So like I said, you can make a card on what is a promoter, or what is an operon, sorry, and how is it controlled. And like we said, an operon is a cluster of genes controlled by a single promoter. And it's literally that simple. So you make a card on that, and what we'd like to do now is do this thing that we learned in Psych Soc of the MCAT called the dual encoding effect. So when you make a card with both a text-based way to know it as well as a image-based, you tend to know it a lot better and you tend to remember it much more strongly. So we're just going to right-click here, hit copy image, and then we're just going to paste it right in here. And so now, whenever we see this card, we're going to see this diagram with it too. And we'll be able to see like, okay, here's the promoter, and these are the three genes that that promoter is controlling. And this whole thing is an operon, and it's really nicely put there. And say, you know, there's no nice diagram, you can just go to Google Images and look up operon, and I guarantee you'll find a good picture for that. So then we can add it. If you like shortcuts like I do, just hit Control Enter, and it'll add your card to the deck, and then it'll be, you know, you'll have a new input as front and back. And so we'll just take a look at that card so you kind of see what you're making. And you can also put it in the particular category when you're making it. So we'll just hit it, study now. So what is an operon and how is it controlled? I have to actively recall. An operon is a cluster of genes and it is controlled by a promoter, right? And so that's what we see here. An operon is a cluster of genes controlled by a single promoter, and then we have this nice diagram talking about it. So now we see these three buttons in the bottom, and this is something that's really important, and it has an effect on how Anki uses the algorithm. So when you see it again, that means that you're going to see the card again in 1 minute, and that typically is the button you press if you feel like you don't understand the topic. Good is when you feel like you know it. You could benefit from looking at it again soon. You would hit good. Easy is just like, you didn't have to think twice about it. Like you just knew the answer straight out, right off the bat. Then you would hit easy. And if you want to do keyboard shortcuts, again is 1, good is 2, easy is 3. So I'm just going to hit again, pretend like I didn't know it. And then it's going to come up, it's going to show it to me again here. And so I'm going to hit enter. And this time I feel good about it. And so it's going to show it to me again because it said 10 minutes and this is the only card in my deck. So let me see it hit it again. And now if you look here, it's a different time. So remember before good said 10 minutes, now it says 1 day. And so as you see this card over and over again, that time will begin to increase more and more. So say I come back tomorrow, I do this card again, the good will probably say like 2 days or 3 days because I know that card. So, I'm just gonna hit good again, and then it's gonna say I finished this deck for now. So then I'd come back tomorrow and then it will come back and then I'll have to do that card again. So that's basically how the system works. And we'll go back and practice a little bit more with making cards. So we're gonna hit add again, and this time I'm not gonna forget and hit biology here. So now we're here. We'll just keep scrolling. We'll look at a little bit more. So what we could also do from the same paragraph is ask the question, where or in what kinds of cells are operons found in? We're gonna just say here, and remember, don't just transcribe the question or transcribe the answer. Make sure that you're taking it out of your head. And that way you're going to remember it better. So what kind of cells are operons found in? Bacteria. Now for this, like, you could find a picture for it, but I think this one's kind of straightforward. So I'm just going to add it, hitting Control Enter, and bam, it added to my stack. Okay, so next what we're going to do is look at using Anki for videos. So it's basically the same exact way. You listen to part of the video and then you ask yourself a question on it and then make a card on it. Basically the same way, but the difference comes in the dual encoding part. So you can't copy an image because it's a video. You can't just copy it in. But what you can do is you can take screenshots. So what we'll do for this is I'll just look up something. So the topic hypertonic, hypotonic, and isotonic on the MCAT. And we'll use the same Khan Academy video. And so basically what I'm trying to show with this is the approach is basically the same, but you're going to have to use screenshotting in order to get your visual. And it's very, very important that you have a visual for topics like these that might be a little tricky because it really helps, understand it. And so we'll go right to the end of the video. And here we see, easily hypotonic, hypertonic, isotonic, go a little bit further. And we see, we see them labeled very nicely. So hypotonic, clearly, there's a net inflow of H2O, so we can make a card on that, asking, what is a hypotonic solution and what happens to the cell in the hypotonic solution. So our answer is, again, we don't want to just, transcribe it from there. We just ask ourselves, what it is. And it's the inflow of water into the cell, right into the cell. And what happens to the cell? Well, there's water coming in, so now it's going to expand. Expands and bursts ultimately because there's so much water. And so now we need our visual. And so what we're going to do is take a screenshot. So it depends on what system you're on, how you do your screenshot. But if you're on Windows, if you hit print screen, this is what should come up, and you should be able to just kind of highlight what you're trying to take a screenshot of and just throw it in there by hitting paste. And now you have this as on your card. So if you're on Mac, it's a little bit different, and sometimes on Windows this doesn't work depending on your computer. But I recommend look up your particular computer and look up how to take a screenshot to your clipboard. And so if you look that up, you'll figure out how exactly on your computer you can take a screenshot and then bring it in to Anki. So that's definitely something that will help not only on videos, but also when you start doing like question review, you'll be able to bring your questions that you're reviewing into your Anki, so then you can make Anki cards on your practice questions. So very helpful there. And we'll just hit add to that. So now what we're going to do is look at diagrams, right? So this could be glycolysis. We can also look at tables, for example, for things like the developmental stages. We're going to use the image occlusion card type in order to deal with things like diagrams and tables. And so what you're basically going to be able to do is block out certain parts on the diagram and then quiz yourself on that. So I'll show you how we can do that here. So I'm just going to look up glycolysis. So glycolysis, your diagram simple. Hit images, find something we like. I think this one, yeah, this one looks really nice. So I'm just going to hit right click it, and then I'm going to hit copy image, and then I'll bring up Anki. And what you'll see here is there's this little picture here with a plus, and so just hit that plus, and then this diagram will actually come up. And so you have all of these kind of image editing buttons here, and so we want to make sure that the rectangle is selected, and you don't need to get too crazy with knowing them, but just make sure the rectangle is selected. And what you can do now is you can like draw squares over certain parts of it, and then that'll allow you to test yourself on them. So I'm just going to draw squares right now on the substrates, so like glucose 6-phosphate, fructose 6-phosphate, fructose 1,6-phosphate, and then on and on. And so what we will see now is that we have the options hide all, guess one, or hide one, guess one. So if you do hide all, guess one, all these boxes will remain, and one of them will be a different color, and you have to identify that different colored one. If you do hide one, guess one, everything will be shown except one of them. So you'll only see one box, and you have to guess what's behind that one box. I like doing hide all, guess one because it stops you from being able to kind of discern what it's not based off of what you can see. So I just hide all of them and then pick one. So if I hit hide all guess one, you'll see 4 cards are added. So it automatically actually makes a card on every single one of these masks. So you don't have to worry about making cards individually. So what you can do now is actually, if you want to get rid of these boxes, we'll just select this and select them all. We can make another set where we're covering the enzyme. So we can just cover the enzyme here, cover the enzyme here, and then here. We can do that all the way through, and then same thing, hide all guess one. And in this case, now we'll be able to see the substrates to make it make a little more sense. So hide all guess one again. And just to see how this looks, we'll go back to Anki, hit resume now, and you'll see we have like 7 cards. So you can hit that. And this is basically what we did, right? So we see this in a different color, and that's what we're trying to guess. So we're trying to guess, and it's glucose, right? So there you go. And then you see the same options come up here. So again, same thing, it'll come up, you hit good or whatever you'd like, and it'll basically just, do exactly what you told it to do. And you can test yourself on the whole process of glycolysis. And then this will come up again, however often Anki thinks it should. And then say you have different diagrams, you just do the same exact thing, you just block out whatever you have. So very, very helpful there. If you have tables or anything, you can do the same exact approach, and you draw these squares like on the things you're trying to hide in the table, and make cards like that. So very, very, very intuitive and easy to use, and extremely helpful for that. So image occlusion is very, very helpful. And for everything else, you can just make basic cards. And if we want to look at our cards here, you have your cards as you make them, and then it'll kind of populate throughout. I know that was a lot of material, and feel free to rewind and replay the parts that you find particularly important. I just wanted to make this video because of just how much this revolutionized the game for me in content review, because it really enabled me to spend less time on the content and more on the MCAT strategies. And myself and a lot of the other MCAT instructors at MCAT Mastery found this technique very helpful. With content review in general, never feel like anything is too easy or too simple for you to review it. I mean, for myself personally, I had to review basic division, right? Like I'd forgotten how to divide decimals, which is something you learn in 5th grade. But I just forgot, and I just looked it up. I watched a 5th grade Khan Academy video and learned it. So anything that you need to review, feel free to review it, because you're going to need to know everything for the exam. And to help you do that, let Anki be your best friend. Put any information that you're having trouble knowing into Anki, and Anki will help you out and know exactly when to show it to you to make sure that you remember it. So really, really use Anki to be your MCAT, sidekick. Lastly, we know how overwhelming this test can be. We were never really taught these high-yield learning strategies like spaced repetition in school, and we didn't necessarily learn how to think critically like you do need to do for the MCAT. So whenever you're feeling low or you're feeling discouraged, just remember that we've been there before and we've done it, and you can as well. Myself and other tutors here at MCAT Mastery have learned a lot through our journeys through the MCAT, and we've put together a step-by-step MCAT strategy video course showing you exactly how to apply a lot of these high-yield learning strategies to increase your score to the top scorer level. We cover strategies for every section of the MCAT, as well as strategies for non-traditional students as well as retakers. We're also available for one-on-one tutoring, so if you feel like you need something a little more individualized, we got you covered. Now, I wish you the best of luck on content review, and you got this.